So yeah, I think there's, I work in general with a lot of social scientists in data. I think it's a pretty significant pathway. It's a pretty significant path line between social science degrees and data science degrees, obviously, but like into the data sphere. And I think one of the biggest reasons we see that is because I think there's just this, it's a fundamentally important to remember that in any data set that you're working with, there's people behind the numbers. So I think where we get really, I think most people get disconnected from that and they see people as an aggregation of outcomes instead of this is an individual who has an experience, has a set of experiences, is a human who has done things and they're not just a series of behaviors at a store. Um, and so, and I think that's really important. And this is just a little bit of an anecdotal story on, um, as you guys heard, I'm elderly, practically geriatric at the ripe age of 32. It hurts to say it. And as you can imagine, all of my friends are having kids. And so I obviously spend a lot of time buying a lot of kids' gifts. And Target officially thinks that I am pregnant. So every single piece of like advertisement I get is around like baby stuff. And I have to be like, I have to figure out how to tell Target, like, no, 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 my womb is empty. I am buying for friends. So, important to know that there are multiple reasons why people might be buying diapers at Target. And it's not just because they personally have a baby.
I get
And I think
millions
that's
of
sort of that human.
GLP-1 ads because I'm doing a GLP-1 study, and every Instagram, Reddit, like regardless, like they just think that I'm craving GLP-1. So I resonate with that.
Just the juice. Give me all of the juice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just really important to remember that behind every data point is a person and that a person can have several motivations. And I think there's sort of that meme going around like segmentations on you shouldn't just segment people on demographic data. And it's like if you segmented consumers on demographic data, King Charles and Ozzy Osbourne would be in the same exact demographic. But I think we can all agree that those are two very different people who probably have very different behaviors in the world. So yeah, that's me. That's what I do. That's my background. So yeah.
Great. All right. Well, as we already have a question,
I wonder if you could say a little bit more. So, yeah, King Charles and Ozzy Osbourne are so different. What would you segment them by? Like what traits or criteria would you personally look at?
Yeah. So Michael and I have this debate all the time on how you segment people. I am a big believer in segmenting based on behaviors versus attitudes because when you're in the marketplace, behaviors are what drive purchasing. So if you're trying to figure out how people are going to actually buy your stuff, so I would probably segment based on, I mean, King Charles. They're both incredibly rich, I guess. So I don't think the socioeconomic status is the issue, but some of their interests, one's maybe more like music. I have no, honestly, King Charles is sort of like white bread to me. But I would look at, what are their behaviors that they take into the marketplace if we're trying to figure out if they're going to be like soda drinkers, right? Like how often do they go out? What are the behaviors that are around? How often do they have picnics, right? Like sodas go with picnics, or how often are they eating pizza? Because who doesn't love pizza and a soda? So looking at some of the other behaviors that actually define who they are as people and not just the fact that they're boomers, they're rich boomers. Like rich boomer is not a segment that we should probably aspirationally looking for.
yeah. And I guess I kind of getting where you're going at of like if you have like high-end cars, on one hand you would say like, oh, you would want income to be definitely like a demographic that you would filter for it. But then again, like the style of that high-end car could vary so much, whether it's like, a high-end two-door Ferrari with a convertible versus like a more prestige like Land Rover or whatever so like yeah, like so yeah, that makes
And
sense.
even just further, right? Like I mean, being rich, but like, are there kids? Are there not kids? Like, is this going to be carding other people or is it not going to be carding other people? I mean, two-door, four-door. I think fundamentally one of the questions of like, are you even interested in cars? Just because you have money does not mean you have a propensity to spend on cars. So there's just understanding other people, other interests. And I think that's really important when you're trying to get to the fringe market of who's not necessarily someone that you would immediately think about, but who you could convince to become a user.
What is your process? By the way, I don't want to commandeer the questions. I think it's very
Go
interesting.
for
I was
it.
wondering about your process to figure out what behaviors or what attitudes might be relevant, right? Like how do we decide that pizza might be irrelevant, whether they go on picnics or eat pizza might be irrelevant um, behavior or attitude. Like what is your process to determine what in the world might be relevant?
Yeah, so I this is an interesting question. It's interesting because when you think about um Michael and I have separately worked with Constellation on like a segmentation project. I worked on it at my old firm. And so we were trying to figure out what is the purchase. I was looking at what the purchasing behavior was around all alcohol. Michael, I think you might have been more specific to beer,
Craft beer focus
craft beers.
more.
Like, so you
Yeah.
were more on craft beers, and I was looking at just sort of what leads people to being beer, wine, or liquor drinkers and trying to understand the segments there. Um, I think one of the biggest trends one of the biggest things that we listen to, obviously we listen to the experts in the room, right? There's people who have tons of shopping data. There's a lot of other different data sources that come into this. So when we're having these conversations, we're talking to it. Obviously, when I was 25 years old doing this constellation project, I was an absolute feral delinquent at bars all the time. So I knew a lot about what caused and motivated drinking behavior. So a little bit of my own life experience came into that as well. And then I would just say qualitative interviews, right? There's usually some sort of qualitative approach where you're going to have a focus group of 15, 20 people. You're going to try to get some information out of them, and then we'll follow up with a survey to try to get into these attitudes and behaviors. And of course, you do the best you can, but there are definitely times where you are looking at a segmentation and you were like, we clearly missed a pretty big variable. Like we are absolutely missing something from this. As I've gotten into leadership, it's been a lot harder. So I would say that right now my process is very much rely on experts and then do a lot of research on the broader, right? Like doing like social listening. What are people in the market, like what are people on social media talking about? What are people in the broader market saying? What are the experts saying? And trying to really come up with a comprehensive set of questions, but more importantly, answer choices that can encapsulate.
Makes a ton of sense. Super interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Ah, great question.
Yeah, and I feel like that even just translates even beyond just segmentation projects of like if you're conducting a survey, like what questions to ask and there is always like a tension that I usually experience of like looking what everyone else did because that obviously like you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time, but there is some also value of kind of like for me at least like the first gut reactions that I kind of come up to and then maybe kind of finding like a middle ground of like here's my like kind of thoughts on it, but then also integrating it with like, previous stuff too. Yeah.